seen in my previous short that I bought an all carbon buckloss fork from eBay, it's a Chinese fork, to replace this existing one that's on my Bianchi road bike. Now, this fork that's on there already that came with it is not an original Bianchi fork. It is a carbon fork, however, it has a long aluminium steerer, so it is likely to be considerably heavier than the buckloss one that I bought from AliExpress. So what I'm going to do today is remove this fork and just have a look at the condition of the crown race and the bearings at the top of the steerer tube as well, and see what they're like, and see whether they need replacing at all before I fit the new carbon fork. Also, I'm waiting for a new star nut. The star nut that's in here suits an aluminium steerer, which is what this has. So I'm waiting for a carbon star nut, which is like a compression nut rather than a star nut, which is kind of on the carbon fibre steerer tube. So, to the disassembly. Got to take the brakes off first. And then, obviously, the handlebars as well. Unfortunately, it started to rain, so I might have to stop for the day, but I've got the fork off and weighed it. It's almost double the weight of the all-carbon fork that I've bought, but on the upside for this fork, it seems to have a very quality arrangement, or a relatively quality arrangement around the crown race there. Look at that, stainless steel, I don't know what you call it, a collet or something, a collar. Where the ball bearing race is, where the integrated ball bearing is in the stem. So, in the steerer tube. So we'll see how the new one fits and how it goes. If it feels worse, if it's loose, doesn't perform well, then I'm going to keep this fork and put it back in, even though it's double the weight. And the new and the old fork side by side. Put a bit of grease on the carbon steerer tube before it goes in. I've not swapped over the crown race because the bike actually has an integrated bearing down there, so it doesn't need the crown race on the fork as well. So straight steerer tube, hopefully it just goes in without a problem. Well, I'm just going to use a dab of this stuff on the steerer tube that I'm clamping the aluminium stem to, just help protect it a little bit. It's carbon gripper paste. So this is what the all carbon fibre fork, the buckloss fork, looks like on the bike. It's not fully fitted yet because I've not got the compression nut at the top of the steerer tube there. I'm waiting for one that suits a carbon fibre steerer tube. But it's all dry fitted and seems to be working absolutely fine. I think it can fit a larger tyre than the 23Cs I've got on there, so when I get my new wheels I will change to at least 25. I might even risk a 28, we'll see, because there's quite a lot of clearance. Let's see if we can see the clearance. It's going to be quite difficult. You can see there, this is a 23, bear in mind. I think there's enough there for a 25 easily. In fact, I've tried a 25 wheel already from my other bicycle. I think 28 might fit, so I think I'll go for 28. If the 28s don't fit, I'll put those on my second bike and keep the 25s on this one. Okay, so I've had the new compression nut delivered to go into the top of the steerer tube, and I'll complete the installation of these buckloss carbon forks in the Bianchi bike, and hopefully I can start riding it again. So I'm going to put this in and pull the fork up, and then tighten the stem bolts, and then hopefully that's the job finished. So the good news is I've got the new compression nut installed, but the bad news is, even with it torqued up, I've still got a little bit of play down at the crown race. Even though it's an integrated bearing, I think that the fork itself is not quite the right shape to integrate with said integrated bearing. So I think it does need the crown race of the old fork after all, to remove a little bit of play that there still is, which you can just about see, but it's very noticeable by feel when you apply the front brake, there's still, you can see a little bit of movement there in the stem, in the steerer. So yes, not the best of news, but not totally unexpected either. Right, so the new fork definitely needed a crown race because it doesn't sit properly without one on the integrated bearing. So even though it has an integrated bearing there, it still needs a crown race. And the problem is finding the crown race that fits the exact bearing is quite difficult. It turns out that the headset that's on there is quite old, and I can only find the correct crown race by buying a whole new set of bearings. So rather than that, I've taken a chance on this kind of generic crown race, which has a split ring, which should make it easy to install on the fork. So I'm going to see how that goes in a moment. The bearing at the top of the steerer tube looks to be in good condition, so no need to replace that. Just put a bit of grease on and put it back on. So likewise, the crown race bearing is in good condition, so that doesn't need replacing. Just put a bit of grease on it before I put it all back together again. And this is the split crown race that I'm going to put on the new fork. I'm just going to mate it up with the bearing and make sure it does fit, and it does, which I'm quite pleased about because it's just a generic crown race. There's no guarantee it was going to actually fit well with the bearing. It's got the right shape, the right angle on that meets the bearing, the 45-degree angle, and hopefully the split will make it easy to get onto the fork without a crown race tool, which I don't have. Right, I've got to say, fitting a split crown race onto a fork is super easy. I've fit these on mountain bikes before that don't have a split, and it's been an absolute pain. Shit. I've fit these crown race rings onto mountain bike forks in the past, and they've been an absolute pig to get on without a split ring. Now I've got to say, on this particular fork, getting this ring all the way down to the bottom with this split is an absolute dream, an absolute piece of cake. So the question will be, how is the performance when it's actually on the bike, and is the split noticeable? Like, I can't see it being noticeable, but I've got to say, incredibly easy to get that ring down to the bottom of the fork. So that's the split ring on the fork. The split ring was about £7 from eBay. We put a little bit of grease on and put the fork into the bike. Now the new fork is fully on. I've tightened all the steerer bolts up and the compression nut and bolt up as well. In terms of how it feels now with the crown race on, and bearing in mind it's not the correct crown race for the bearing set, it's a generic crown race. It is not bad, but not 100% perfect. So if I press the front brake and push forward, there's still a little bit of movement of the steerer tube and the steerer compared to the frame, just a little bit. I've been out for a ride and it feels okay. But what I'm going to do is go out for a longer ride and see what it feels like, because there's a little bit more movement than with the old fork, but I've tightened up the compression nut as much as I dare, really. You can't over tighten these, and I don't think it's going to pull it in anymore. So it could well be that the steerer tube, the carbon steerer tube, isn't the perfect size for the bearings that are in there, or the generic crown race isn't the perfect fit for the bearings. Actually, it's a VP Components Crane Creek bearing set headset. But I'm going to take it on a long ride and see how it fares. I've taken it out on a slightly longer ride and checked out the feeling of the front wheel, the new front fork, and it feels absolutely fine. And like I said in the earlier section, there's a little bit more play in the headset than I'd like, but it feels absolutely fine when I'm riding it. So I'm going to take it on obviously longer rides and gradually ramp up the speeds down the hills until I get complete confidence in this new carbon fork. So far so good though.